Welcome back to the Nick and Psycho podcast. This time though, I don't have him. We lost him. We had a little technical difficulties and he wasn't patient. So, and we're doing this right after the movie. So this is fresh thought. And I got Angelo to my left here, and I got some kid from Pittsburgh. I don't know. He just kind of showed up. Just kind of pulled up here. Yeah.
Who?
This guy, not you.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, we got a little talk. We got to talk about this movie, right? Angelo, we'll start off with you. What's your initial thoughts? I know it was a very roller coaster-esque movie here. What was your initial thoughts going?
The political.
Mm.
It had a lot of political talks, like how we were going through the Cold War at that time.
Vietnam War.
Vietnam.
Yeah.
Which was like the Gulf War. So it represented a lot of the political
Upheavals. Yep.
upheavals.
I think like they tried to like I said this in class. It was like this they have these political stereotypes in which like Jake said, with the juxtaposition with you have this guy that is really lazy, very like laid back, and then you have Walter, who's very aggressive, very like want to get stuff done. And it's one and like they said, he was with Seattle 7, which was this radical group that was protesting the Vietnam War, and you have this guy that was pretty much protesting the war with very good friends with Walter, who will fight for anything. He went to war, obviously, so he's okay with he's with going to war because he went and fought. But like at the same time, you go fight a war. Sometimes you're like, wow, I can't believe I was just put through that, and you're against it ever going to war. And maybe that's why they're good friends, because they both despise the political, and that's why Walter always is bringing. It feels like he's always bringing up political things going on around the world, because it's just like his mind is set on like what America is really doing outside of the nation, because he's like I swear he definitely has post-traumatic stress disorder from the war, so he's constantly like stressing about what America's doing. And like the movie even starts out with George Bush like talking about Kuwait and talking about like what they're gonna do, and I feel like that's the whole track of how the movie ends up, and it's really an embodiment of American politics. We feel like there's a resolution. We feel because we're this patriotic, we're this perfect country. We think everything's good, and we think there's a resolution to everything, but there really isn't. And that's what America tries to do, because we're number one. We think we're the best, so we can solve things. We're able to do it. And I feel like that's where the movie is, because, again, there's really no resolution to this movie. It kind of just ends. There's no, like, climax and then a resolution. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of how American politics is, right? What do you think about it, Dom? Like, do you feel like it represents politics, or do you feel like it's kind of like the politics is just there to make jokes because it's easy to make satirical content against politics?
What movie are we talking about?
Big Lebowski.
Dude, I don't remember anything political from that movie.
Okay, do you remember how? I wish the camera was a little bit zoomed out, but anyways, yeah. Anyways, okay, let me jog your memory a little bit. So, Walter, you remember the guy the voice actor from Monsters Inc.
The bowler.
Yes. And then you have the dude.
Yeah, who wants his money?
Who is put in weird situations consistently, right? He was just living his life. All of a sudden, everyone's on him constantly. Like, he can't, like, get away from the haphazardness, and there's just, like, everyone is just on him, aggressive, like, every single second. And, like, all he wanted to do was just chill back and lay back at the end of the day. Like, there wasn't, like, oh, I'm going to go out and do this. But he got put in this situation, then put in this next situation. Then he has to, like, kind of figure out what he needs to do next. But, like, he's this laid-back guy. And that, like, kind of, like, shows how, like, laid-back guys, like, you can try and be laid back, but, like, with the demands from society, you are constantly being brought up to deal with societal issues, and that's kind of what we see throughout this movie. So, and then Donnie was the guy that I can't remember, the guy from Grown Ups, right?
Yeah.
And he just isn't there. Like no, like he only talks to Walter, and every time when he talks to Walter, it's it's not a welcoming greeting. Like it's shut the fuck up, Donnie. Shut the fuck up, Donnie. Because every time, and I'm trying to think if there's any more. But do you remember? So are you getting a grasp of what this movie was about, or how many times have you watched this movie? Can you remember? That's 1998.
Probably like twice.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't seen this movie in a while, and I couldn't actually remember how it ended. And that's why, because there's no real resolution. Like, they just oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I just
We
remember
kind of figured out what happened.
something about money
So,
and finding a girl.
yes. Okay, good. So, I'm going to try and briefly explain it because the idea is you understand this, but it's for your sake, so you can talk about it better. Remember, so the other Lebowski, the big, not the, I guess the big Lebowski, is he doesn't really have money, but he's helping, he never had a successful business. He's this fake billionaire, and all the money comes from his wife who had died, right? And now he's married to this, what's the word? this fine lady that, just is throwing herself around and doing crazy bat shit. And she doesn't, he didn't love her anymore because she was, not for him. And it was just kind of like part of the lavish, rich lifestyle, but he's not really rich. So he has this facade, and he gets word that she got kidnapped. When she didn't, she actually left somewhere. And lo and fucking behold, he then asks, because he just found dude, the other Lebowski, and he's like, oh, here's this loser. I can use him to go give this money, right? Because he doesn't want, and the money wasn't in the briefcase because there was no money in the briefcase. Because he wants the wife to die pretty much. He doesn't care for her, right? So he would rather just have her just stay captured. He just did this to look good, right? Because his whole life really has been a facade. I mean, he's in a wheelchair, and he can't really. And he's like, "Oh, I did all this without any legs." Like, no, you didn't do much. And it is because you're a paraplegic. You can't really amount to anything. And he wants to act as like, "Oh, I'm this prominent figure within our society." Okay, so is it coming back? Like,
It's a kind of forgettable movie.
Well, and that's why I said is like there's no real story to this movie. Like they try to act like it because like every movie has to have like this initial story, but it's like we're gonna kind of reel you in with this story, but that's only to keep you captivated. And really, the main point of the movie is how the characters interact with each other and how like they talk amongst each other. It has nothing to do with an actual story, and that's why you can forget it. And that's why, like, usually when I go back to watch a movie, I can, like, I know how it ends. I know that, like, it doesn't matter if I haven't watched it in 2 or 3 years. I can kind of remember most of the main part. Like, there's nothing to really remember about this movie other than there was 3 guys just in a bowling league that got into some shit, right? And it's like, it is a hard movie to remember. But, like, I'm going to ask a question then without much knowledge. Do you feel like political, like, what's the word? Agendas should be within the movies as long as, like, it's being satirical? Because I feel like this movie actually isn't using politics in a satirical way. It's really just using it to not make fun of it. Actually, it is definitely satirical, but do you think politics should be used in a comedy if it's not satirical? Like, do you think... I think the better question is, like, should they overuse it? Is there an overusing too much political agenda in a movie?
As long as it is, like, advancing the plot or showing more about a character, I feel like there's not going to be too much.
Yeah, and they picked the character part for sure. And I think they're kind of criticizing America in this movie and how it deals with certain politics, for sure. But Angelo, What? Yeah.
I think that it. I think that the plot was basically American politics. I think that them when they stole the rug
Yeah.
and they peed on his carpet. That kind of showed hatred and aggression.
Yeah, no one really tried to converse with him. No one tried to really like talk to dude like what was the issue? What's the issue? Like no one tried to really like and even the cop like didn't even be like what's your side of the story? Like he didn't even give him a chance. And that's like kind of like how America is. Like it's like we're not even going to like fully look into the problems here. We're just kind of like go straight dive into it, full guns ablazing, like throw some money at it and there we go. We solved the issue. No, like you need to like investigate and further examine. And even the cop that like with the dude goes, "Do you have any leads?" And he goes, "Yeah, we got leads." We know like he's joking around. Like there's no seriousness in it. Like we need to like actually like look at the whole scope of the issue and attack it from a different way. But this movie really talks about like just brings into the fact that we just every time we're always being just aggressive, just attack it like immediately, no like thought into it. And I feel like that's kind of like what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this movie is an embodiment of how American politics really is like visualized. But I'm trying to see where else to put this. So, do you like how there was no ending, Angelo? Do you think that's the best way they should have took it? Do you think it further goes into that American politics thing, or is it?
I further went into that American politics category because they, when he, after they stole, after the money I guess got stolen, then he went. I think that was set up when I when they went to that kid's house.
Yeah,
So that was all. That kind of got my attention.
it was like with all what had happened throughout the movie, you kind of could understand it was not going to be the kid's car because like again, and that again, that's another like, oh, like we're just gonna throw our money, we're just gonna like immediately attack it, no like look like thinking about it, like oh maybe they immediately assumed right away just because that car was parked right next to the house that it was the kid's car, just because his homework assignment was left in the car. It's a lot of, and that's what I guess they're pointing out is like America. A lot of things we do is just kind of assume things without like further examining it and investigating it and understanding the full scope of it. We just immediately attack it with no prior knowledge, and I guess that's kind of what they're alluding to here, with them insinuating that the car is owned by the kid.
Think about how Walter's character was portrayed.
Yeah, very aggressive.
Yeah.
Definitely the most aggressive character, right? He just like yeah, and then the German nihilists who really weren't nihilists. The German nihilists like immediately like he's like I'm not taking shit from them. I'm gonna fuck them up. Like I'm gonna fuck these guys up. I don't give a. And that's kind of how America is. Like we're like super competitive because we're quote unquote number one. So then we're like, oh, we're not gonna take shit from nobody. We're gonna fuck them up, right? We're not gonna let anybody baby us. Like we're number one. We got the highest GDP. Like we're the best. So like that's kind of how he felt like he was. Like I'm a Vietnam war veteran. I'm the best. I can take these guys down no matter what, because that's just how confident he was, and that's how confident America is. I mean,
That kid actually seemed young.
he didn't
young
say a
to
word
life,
either.
and he didn't say a word.
That was funny. Like this guy's on his deathbed, and apparently his son is very young.
Yeah.
That was kind of weird, but I don't know if they did that on purpose or whatever. There are a lot of things. I feel like what's nice about a movie like this, when you don't have an actual like full like story, like Aristotle plot, whatever, blah blah blah, climax resolution. When you don't have that, then you kind of just have the freedom of just putting whatever you want in the movie, as long as like there's symbolism, there's motifs, there's like, again, like this is mostly focusing on, you know, the characters and how they interact, and then you have that overarching metaphor, which again, like we believe is the American aggressiveness, and maybe it's not American politics, maybe it's just the idea of aggression, right? And like haphazardness, and how life really is. Like, yeah, there's no real like, what's it called, like satisfying ending. You're just like, you go through life and shit happens and then move on. And that's kind of a nihilist outlook on life. And they're talking about nihilists all the time within the movie. So maybe the whole movie really is just outlook or a perspective on nihilism and how it works. If you don't have something like a god or something to look after you die, then what's the purpose of living? So then, like, that's why there's no purpose in this movie, and that's why there's no good resolution, or throughout the movie there's no actual purpose. He's just kind of doing stuff, like they're just going through the motions, pretty much, you know. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think of other things here. Is there? Do you like that they kept using that same song, Angelo? Do you think that was a good idea? Do you think they should use more audio throughout the movie? Or, like, again, we watched, what was it, the Stage Wagon, right? Remember how there was a constant theme song just going in your head? Like, do you like when they do that, when they have the same song so it sticks with the theme? Or do you like that, like whenever these newer movies, like, you know how in the newer movies they have a soundtrack that they came out with, and then they have multiple different songs, but they have a theme to them. So do you like when it's two songs or like one song just playing the entire time? Or do you like when it's multiple different songs?
Multiple, cause yeah, it adds to the theme.
Right. Yeah, and it's like when you have all these songs, it's kind of like you feel like the theme gets lost, and then it's just like there. And then I feel like with these movies, these older movies, when they had one song throughout the whole movie, it's kind of like trying to like bring you back. I mean, they had multiple songs in this movie, but like there was the main song. I can't remember the song, but they played it like 3 times, and it was like every time they played it, it was like when there was no one talking, and it was literally just like trying to use visuals to send a message. And I liked how like multiple times in the movie they would kind of like it was so weird because you knew the story was going nowhere at some point. You figured it out, like there's nothing gonna happen and there's no resolution, but they like to like hint at certain things, like when they showed the German's foot, or when they showed the girl's foot, like, this is the girl that's supposed to be kidnapped. Here's her foot, because at the beginning of the movie you saw her green toenails. And so now you can associate that with the actual person. So now you know that person actually isn't kidnapped. I like how they used like just images to explain to you something that's happening. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes like it's bad because people get confused. But the idea of this movie, you're supposed to be confused.
How about when that other Kyoto
Donnie.
came out as Jesus?
Yeah, I don't know like
That
what
should've
the
got-
purpose of that use of that character really was.
Another example of aggression throughout that film.
Oh yeah, he was aggressive.
Because, and I bet that at the time with what we said with the Vietnam War and all that, but pertaining to this movie.
Right. Why do you think they incorporated a character like that?
Because a lot of they were talking about Iraq, and you saw Bush say about Saddam
Right.
Hussein. So I bet that all tied in with that. They
Okay.
didn't believe in Jesus, so
Mm.
they
Oh, you know what I'm thinking?
they tried to draw attention that way to the plot.
They randomly made Walter a Jew, right?
It made
They made him a Jew, and then you have this Jesus character, Jesus, coming in and meeting, and he's like being aggressive towards Walter specifically. Like, it didn't even sound like he was being aggressive to dude. Like, he's like, I'm gonna fuck you guys up. I'm gonna fuck you guys up. But I feel like you could tell by the way the film was, the shots, it was kind of like, and it might be that might be a fucked up joke. I don't know if they're getting at that, but it's like Jesus like talking to a Jew, right? And like the Jews obviously like killed Jesus, so like I don't know if that's like the joke, like if they're like joking about that. Like that's what, like, it's listed as a comedy. There was certain things, but like you feel like in a comedy, like you can feel like there's like an actual like punchline. There wasn't really much punchlines in this, but like I feel like there's like layered jokes that you like as you watch the movie more, you'll actually be able to understand. And I feel like that might have been one joke. But like you find yourself like kind of like cracking up a little bit like during most of the movie. Like it's not like a knee slapper where you're like can't stop laughing at the movie. It's more of like that was pretty quick witted, or that like it was just like everyone in the movie was just super quick witted. So you're like, oh, okay, that's funny. But like nothing where it's like you're like overly hysterical and you're laughing expressively. Let's see here. Do you let me see. Do you think that they should have kept that story going, like that narrative, like let's find out who like what actually is all happening, cuz it feels like so haphazard. Like when I'm watching a movie, want to be able to track what's going on and figure it out, and when especially when they don't make it too obvious, like try to figure out, okay, who's actually is like the culprit, or who's like the problem, or who's like what's all like happening behind the scenes that we don't see as a movie viewer. But do you like that? Do you think they should have continued like what actually happened? Like we still don't really know if the Big Lebowski actually did what the dude and Walter were conspiring that he did. But would you like to see that story continue? And I understand based on the theme that the story shouldn't continue, but would you have liked to see that story continue?
Yeah, I would have.
Okay.
Because that, I think, added a lot to the story.
Yeah, I think I would have liked to see it continue and persist, because it really the way it was going, it like actually like I wanted to see like, and I guess we get to see like, oh yeah, most of these groups that were attacking the dude were really not like integrated at all. They were just kind of like separate entities that were like, oh, I want that money.
That drew my attention to the movie.
Yeah, that's what I talked about. I said they just have they can't. I understand like there's no real story here, but they have to introduce like some type of narrative to captivate you, so then you can focus on the other aspects of the movie. But they don't really want the story to be the main meal, which typically the narrative is the main like meal, right? It's the main part of the movie, and then everything else is side. But for this, they wanted to use the character interactions as the main part of the movie. But here's a little bit of a narrative to keep you captivated, keep you on the edge of your seat, so you're figuring out what's happening. But like if like for example, if all of a sudden there's no story, are you gonna keep watching? No, you're not. So like you need some. But this movie's trying to explain that as long as there's a little bit of a narrative, you can still make a good movie. You do not have to have an insane story arc to make a good movie. And that's kind of what they're showing here. And I feel like with comedies, they do that a lot, right? They do that a lot with comedies, and I love it, because it's like, wait, I thought something was supposed to happen here, nothing's happening, and all of a sudden, like, you're like, what is going on? Can you think, Dom, is there any comedies that come to your mind? Like movies, like, so we can like
that don't have like
compare it.
a story, or
it could just be like, yeah, I guess, yeah.
I don't know, I guess I'm kind of thinking of Step Brothers, how there's not really
Yeah.
a story, but it's just like showing how those two guys
Interact.
who became Step Brothers became best friends,
Yeah.
and like how they ended up having a common enemy to join them together.
Yeah, I mean, like that's a good example. That's literally what I'm getting at. Like, it's literally like, yeah, there's some shit that goes down, and like there's certain things that like these guys are all of a sudden stepbrothers, and then they're like going through the motions and trying to figure shit out and like deal with each other, and like shit goes down a lot, and they have a lot of conflict and a lot of bad shit happens, but like the main point of it is really not the story, but it's how these two in a situation like this would interact, and it's funny because you're like, you're not used to it, right? Because like middle-aged men living with their parents, and those parents get together, and all of a sudden they have to be brothers, and they're like, and of course they have to like embody what a middle-aged man living with their parents would act like, and that in itself, again, those two actors did a really great job, and that again, this is really good acting in The Big Lebowski, because again, they're having to portray these very stereotypical, radical, like thinking figures in the society. And I like what somebody else said, like they're trying to show that, like, yeah, we don't think all societies like this, but there is individuals that kind of fit these molds, and like, or these molds, and they kind of like act a certain way based on public thought, and they don't act how they should think, and that's kind of what leads to stereotypes. Is like you just like follow a group, follow what other people are doing, and we can see like Walter, like it's so like his mind is so set on one thing, and there's no like you don't see like other parts of his personality. Like you can like the character does not. I like that too. I feel like if the story isn't developing, the characters shouldn't either. The characters did not develop at all during this movie. Would you agree, Angela?
I agree.
You think none? Is there any character that you can think of that would have developed?
Walters maybe.
No, because I think he was still an idiot by the end. He still did dumb shit. I mean, like, I guess like him beating up those Germans, but like that really was the same thing. Like he still was like showing that aggressive nature, showing that confident nature, showing
I didn't see any
conflictual.
I didn't want to say that was like new development, but
Right.
the co-ops maybe.
The cops developing. What cops?
Like throughout the film when they remember they arrested him.
Well, oh, you're saying like the cops as an overarching. Well, I think with the cops, every cop that he ran into, the two cops, like I said, were like just didn't take him serious, didn't care about like him as a person, because he was this low end dude, like very like lazy and very unproductive and not prominent in his society. So they're like, screw you, we don't care. And that's kind of like another thing, another poke at, another satirize or another piece of satire against American society. Like we kind of throw the poor people in the back end and just say, hey, deal with it. Right. And like, don't really care. Like, okay, well, everything's about money. And I mean, we're in a capitalist society. Maybe these directors are Marxists and socialists, and maybe they're like making fun of capitalism because they're like, oh, capitalism is just about money. If you have money, you have social power, and when you have that social power, you can just get out of anything. Or if you don't have that social power, you get screwed, and you're like a dude over here who constantly gets the butt end of everything. Is there anything like you would like to note about this movie, Angela? Like anything that like stood out to you? Any specifics that you don't usually like? Anything unique from this movie compared to other movies?
I liked my my favorite part of the
Yeah.
movie too was the conclusion of the movie when that Western guy.
Yeah, you like Samuel Elliott.
Yeah,
The narrator.
Yeah.
he knew. He that the ending I liked. I thought he did a really good ending.
How often do you see the narrator come into the movie and then all of a sudden he's a character?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. Maybe I kind of wait. I mean, well, they did do that. They brought him in to talk to dude, and I like that they brought him in, and now he's kind of a character before the movie. I wouldn't have liked it if he came in at the beginning, right? He started talking, and then we don't see him until the very end, and then that's it. I feel like them bringing him in the middle of the movie kind of like allowed it to like break the fourth wall better. Because that's really what they did at the end with him, is just use him to break the fourth wall and just like mess with the viewers.
Yeah, and it's like a little weird too because he was representing his conscience
Yes,
during the movie.
I like that. I mean, good narrator always kind of makes it makes the story better. And again, like we said, the story wasn't supposed to be good. It was supposed to be just this captivating facet of the movie. And if you have a narrator, it helps that for sure. And then you use the narrator to break the fourth wall to ultimately say like, hey, we don't give a shit about the story. We just use this guy to further captivate you to wanting to, stay compelled with the movie. And he's now like a character, and now he's breaking the fourth wall at the end, and he's messing with dude. He's talking like I think that was well done by the brothers that directed the movie. What would you, Angela? What would you rate this movie out of 10?
Maybe a 10. Because I
10 out of 10.
Yeah, I liked it because I thought it stood out as a comedy.
Yeah, it's not your natural comedy. It was kind of unique.
Yeah.
I like that. I mean, I haven't watched a comedy in a while. Dom, you watch? What's the last comedy you watched other than Step Brothers? I know you watch that all the time. You think of one? I can't really think of one on the top of my head either.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I've like watched recently. I mean, not that it's a movie, but I just watched Rick and Morty.
Okay. So like, they go on an adventure all the time, right?
Yeah, and how there's like a different lesson each episode.
Yeah, and there's a lesson, but there's no lesson in this movie.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like shit happens.
It's kind of like a representation of life.
Yeah.
How
a nihilist. I mean, like, I don't know.
How you're like never gonna know the answer to everything.
No.
Like at the end of the day, you just go through life and you just have to live it the way you want to live it. Because everyone is a side character.
Oh yeah. Like it turned into like everyone was just like there and like fucking with them, and like here's this shit, here's this happening, there's that boom 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 boom, and then we never like see like anything come out of it. They're just like, oh, because still same shit.
Like to you, you're the main character, but everyone else is their own main character, and everyone else has their own storyline going on that you don't know about. So, I mean, like me going to the hospital today and doing my stuff, like you don't even know about that because you have your own story today, and every person has their own story, and you'll never know anyone's full story.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to when at the beginning of when he's narrating, when Elliot's narrating, he goes, he's the hero, but I can't really call him that. He goes, I can't really call him a hero. And that's kind of like, okay, he's this main character, and usually the main character is seen as this hero, seen as this positive guy that you can kind of like get with and be like empathize for them and like understand what they're dealing with, and they end up doing positive things that like, oh yeah, like that's my main character, blah blah blah. But in this story, it's trying to show that the main character does not need to be this positive hero that's just like completing and being successful and things going their way, it can just go horrible for the main character. Let's do it the other way and have it just be so completely horrible for this main character and just see how they deal with it. And then the main character literally is just completely reactive and not proactive. That's typically what you see in movies. You see a main character that's proactive, and they're always like trying to do what's best and trying to figure out the next solution, do this. I mean, you see a little bit of that with dude, like he tries to but then at the end of the day, he gets easily distracted by certain things. You know what I'm saying? Like he was like, dude, what were these people doing in my house? Like why they're talking about your name, talking about your wife. And then he goes outside and all of a sudden he's willing to go get $1,000 that he doesn't have to go get a blowjob from the wife. And it's like he can get just easily distracted. And like usually with the other characters, they're so like every main character in a movie, like where there's this big story, they're all just so driven to go find that solution and figure it out. Here's the problem. Let's give this conflict, and boom, I'm just gonna go get it done and make positive things happen within the story. Trying to think here. I like how they give each character a plan, like, and they fuck it up every single time. Like, I love that, like, and that just goes back to, like, the American politics. Like, we always have a plan, or just politics in general. Like, we always have a plan to do something, and it just really never works. Like, because there's always something that stops it from solving the underlying problem. And I really like how every time you're like, oh, they're going to figure this out. They're going to figure this out. No, they just like find a way to fuck it up. And like, oh my gosh, like Walter has this plan. He's going to ransack the dudes that he's giving the money to. Blah, blah, blah. Dude falls out of the car and his Uzi starts spraying everywhere. And it hits dude's car, and all of a sudden the people are driving away, and it's like, oh, so this is how the movie's going to be. It's just going to be them fucking up every single time they try to figure it out. And yeah, I mean, like, they really, like, they try to be proactive a little bit, but, like, at the end of the day, they're just reactive, and they just can't really solve anything. But, yeah. Do you like how they kept throwing shit at, like, just kept throwing things, conflict, dude's way? Did you kind of empathize with him? When he just like, or with him not being this heroistic character, did you find it hard to empathize with him?
No.
So you could empathize with him, or no, you couldn't. Sorry,
Couldn't.
Okay, so do you believe it's because he's this? Like he's not really this main. Like he's not really a protagonist. He's more of just like.
Yeah,
here's the main character, and he's just kind of going through it.
Like I'm the dude. So, I mean, he's more of an antagonist.
Oh, okay. So do you think everyone's really an antagonist at the end of the day?
No.
So who would be or do you think there's no protagonist? Do you see a single character in this movie that you feel like could be a protagonist? I do not, which I like.
No, they're all antagonists.
I think you're onto something though.
I really saw it now.
Protagonist.
The dude being an antagonist.
Oh, you didn't see that?
I saw him as being an antagonist.
Okay.
Definitely.
So, but you didn't see anybody as being a protagonist, correct?
No.
Yeah, I feel the same way about how it kind of like how everybody interacted. Like there was no like positive influence throughout the movie, and which was very odd, and like you felt like kind of like Donnie could be it, but then at the same time like there's this theory that he really doesn't exist. He's just like a not a subconscious, but like a like what's it called whenever you have like a imaginary friend, like it's like this person that doesn't really exist, like kind of like schizophrenic from like we're like suggesting Walter's schizophrenic, and he's developed that from being a war veteran, and like every time Donnie goes to speak, it's like it is kind of like a subconscious, and he's like, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. So like he has these kind of like intrusive thoughts, like, and he wants to be aggressive, and maybe like Walter is the epitome of American politics, and it's not just the movie. Maybe it's that one character, and which would be cool because it's not the main character, right? So then, like, if that's the case, okay, wait, hold up. What if, hear me out, dude is like liberal politics and Walter is conservative in like 1998, because this movie was in 1998, or it's like conservative and liberal in 1970s or 80s, whenever this movie is set. Do you think that's a possibility? Like, is there a possibility that it's like two different, like conflictual things, but they exist in the same society, and they're like kind of like, and like with the friends thing, like with dude and Walter being friends, like they're really like they're not like super friends, like they never like act like friends, but like they're supposed to be because they're two parties within within a country, so they're kind of like they have to work together, but they're not really friends. You see what I'm getting at? Like throughout the movie, did you feel like there was any friendliness going on between Walter and the dude? Not really, right? Like they were just like interacting with each other consistently, which sometimes we feel like the more times you interact with someone, you feel like they're your friend. But I feel like they are the epitome of two political parties that cannot get together, like cannot figure out a solution together, and they have their own little plans, and they want to figure things out. And Walter being aggressive, so well, I don't know what if they're a certain, like I don't know if Walter's conservative and dude's seen as liberal, whatever, but they could be seen as these two political parties within a country that are, you know, not working together, and they're trying to, but like they have their own little plans in their heads. So then like it just fails because they take it at two different ways, and they take it with two different perspectives, and then it just nothing works. And that could be it, but I don't know. I think I'm just conspiring at this point, but you never know with these type of movies. You kind of feel like you have to pick apart the director's brain to really understand what they were getting at this movie. This is definitely one of those movies. Other movies, sometimes it's simplistic and very straightforward. You can kind of understand what they're getting at. But I think I would rate this movie, I'd say around a 9. I just feel like on my scale, I feel like I would have liked somewhat more of like a finishing touch to the story. Even though it's not the main part, I still would have liked to understand like what was going on. And I feel like they're getting at like, oh, here's the main point. Here's the main points of what happened. She never got kidnapped. He's not a millionaire. Blah 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 blah. But like, I kind of wish I would have understood like more of like what was going on, because I still felt a little confused throughout the movie. But I feel like with a movie, I want to not be confused as I'm watching it. Honestly, that's how I feel. Other people don't really care, but I feel like if I'm rating a movie, it needs to keep me like understanding of what's going on. Like, you can throw me for a loop, but don't like by the end of the movie have me like, okay, what was going on at this point? What was going on? Like, I have no clue. Like, I shouldn't have to go read something afterwards to understand what was going on. You know what I'm getting at? I should be able to understand it. But anyways, we hit the 40-minute mark. Any last remarks, Angelo?
Nah, I thought the characters of this movie were portrayed pretty good.
That's good. All right.
And there was a lot of aggression. Nah.
Yeah, aggression was definitely a major thing, and like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if it's not about politics, not about America, not about this, it's definitely about aggression. I feel like that.
Especially the aggression, like towards the dude and Walter.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at Walter's aggression toward the other.
Donnie.
Yeah.
Yeah. super aggressive. Like nothing ever came nice out of his mouth,
Todd,
except for when he brought up burgers, In-N-Out Burgers. He's like, wait, yeah, we'll go to In-N-Out Burgers. He's like, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. Oh, yeah, we'll go to In-N-Out Burgers.
then you look at the aggression, towards the other,
I'm hungry now.
le, le,
What do you?
towards the other Lebowski.
Yeah, every character there was aggression
How
without.
how they picked. Remember how Walter picked them up at the end,
Yep.
slammed them on the
Just
ground.
like why?
That
Like
showed
he
the
pulled out the gun at the bowling alley.
aggression, pulled out the gun at the bowling
Yeah.
alley.
Yeah, I feel like that's just definitely the main point if it's not anything we talked about on this podcast. But yeah, that'll be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this is our last podcast. Definitely it's going to be my last podcast in this studio, unfortunately, for a good bit. So, fortunately, again, we didn't have Psycho here today, but glad to do this with Angela and Dom. So, peace out. Thank you, Humphrey. And let's roll cats. Roll cats.
Roll Tide.
Okay.